The rain hammered against my windshield like 1,000 angry fists, each drop exploding into mist that my wipers could barely clear. The narrow country road stretched endlessly before me, winding through dense forest that seemed to swallow what little light remained of the October evening. I should have stayed home, should have ignored the call from the hospital about my forgotten prescription pad. But routine was all I had left these days, and breaking it felt dangerous in ways I couldn't articulate. My headlights caught something dark sprawled across the yellow line. At first, I thought it was a deer, another casualty of these treacherous mountain roads. But as I slowed, my heart climbing into my throat, I realized the shape was wrong, too angular, too human. I stopped the car 20 feet away, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed at me to drive past, to call 911 from a safe distance, to not get involved. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. Getting involved meant pain. It meant loss. It meant standing in a cemetery under gray skies, watching a tiny casket being lowered into the ground, while your ex-husband blamed you for everything with his silence. But I was still a nurse, even if I no longer worked at the hospital, even if I'd chosen isolation over healing, solitude over saving lives. Some things were coded too deeply into your DNA to ignore. I grabbed my emergency medical kit from the trunk, the one I kept stocked out of habit, and approached the figure with my phone's flashlight cutting through the darkness. The rain soaked through my jacket within seconds, plastering my blonde hair to my face, but I barely noticed. All my attention focused on the man lying motionless in the road. He was on his side, one arm trapped beneath him, the other flung out as though reaching for help that hadn't come. Blood pooled beneath his torso, mixing with rainwater to create pink rivulets that ran toward the drainage ditch. His suit was expensive. I could tell even in the dark and ruined by weather and violence. Charcoal gray, perfectly tailored before the bullet holes had torn through it. Bullet holes. My breath caught as I knelt beside him, professional instinct overriding the fear that screamed through my nervous system. His face was turned away from me, but I could see the strong line of his jaw, the dark hair plastered to his skull, the broad shoulders that suggested someone who took care of himself, someone important, someone dangerous. I pressed my fingers to his neck, searching for a pulse. For a long moment, nothing. Then, faint and thready beneath my fingertips, the flutter of life stubbornly refusing to surrender. "Can you hear me?" I asked, already assessing his injuries with hands that knew this dance too well. 2 gunshot wounds that I could see, one in his left shoulder, one in his side. The shoulder wound wasn't bleeding much anymore, but the side was serious, possibly a through and through, but I couldn't tell without moving him, and moving him might kill him. His eyelids flickered. Dark eyes, nearly black even in the flashlight's beam, focused on me with an intensity that made me draw back instinctively. There was something primal in that gaze, something that recognized I was prey even as he lay dying in the rain. "Hospital," he managed, his voice a rough whisper. "Can't. They'll find me." "You need a hospital," I insisted, already pulling out my phone. "You've been shot. I can't." His hand shot out with surprising speed, clamping around my wrist with enough force to make me gasp. "No hospital," he repeated, and this time there was steel beneath the pain in his voice. "Please, they'll kill me." I looked into those dark eyes and saw truth there, along with something else. Desperation. The kind of desperation I recognized from my own mirror, the kind that came from losing everything and clinging to life by your fingernails. "I can't treat gunshot wounds in the middle of the road," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Even if I wanted to help you, which I haven't decided yet, I'd need supplies, equipment, a sterile environment. Your place." It wasn't a question. Somehow he knew I lived nearby, or maybe he was just gambling on human decency. "Please, I won't hurt you. I just need to live through the night. Every rational thought told me to refuse, to call the police, to let someone else deal with this nightmare. But as I knelt there in the rain with this stranger's blood on my hands, I thought about all the nights I'd lain awake wishing I could go back, wishing I could save the one person I'd failed to save. My son. My beautiful boy who'd needed me and found me wanting. Maybe this was penance. Maybe this was a chance to prove I could still save someone, even if I hadn't been able to save the person who mattered most. My car's right there, I said, making a decision I knew I'd probably regret. Can you walk if I help you? I can try. Getting him to his feet was a nightmare of suppressed groans and dead weight that nearly dragged us both down. He was tall, at least 6'2", and solid with muscle despite the blood loss. I wedged myself under his uninjured shoulder and half dragged, half carried him to my Subaru. Every step felt like it took an hour. Every labored breath from him made me certain he'd collapse before we reached the car. But somehow, we made it. I maneuvered him into the back seat where he could lie down, then threw a blanket over him from my emergency kit. His eyes had closed again, and for a terrible moment, I thought I'd lost him, but his chest still rose and fell, shallow but steady. The drive to my house took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, checking to make sure he was still breathing, watching for headlights that might belong to whoever had done this to him. The isolation I'd craved suddenly felt like a liability. My nearest neighbor was 3 miles away. No one would hear me scream. My house appeared like a beacon in the darkness, a small craftsman-style cottage I'd bought with the divorce settlement. It was supposed to be my fresh start, my sanctuary. Now I was bringing danger right through the front door. I pulled up as close to the entrance as possible and killed the engine. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle, but the wind had picked up, rattling the trees that surrounded my property. I had to work quickly. Getting him inside was even harder than getting him to the car. He was barely conscious now, his weight nearly impossible to support. I managed to drag him through the front door and into the guest bedroom I never used, the one that was supposed to have been a nursery before everything fell apart. I laid him on the bed, already mentally cataloging what I'd need. My home medical supplies were extensive, another remnant of my nursing days. Surgical gloves, antiseptic, gauze, sutures, antibiotics I wasn't supposed to have. I'd kept everything after leaving the hospital, some part of me unable to let go of being needed. His eyes opened as I began cutting away his shirt. "Thank you," he whispered. "I won't forget this." "Save your strength," I replied, my hands already moving with professional efficiency. "And don't thank me yet. This is going to hurt." As I examined the wounds more closely under the bedroom's harsh light, I saw that the shoulder injury was relatively clean, the bullet having passed through muscle without hitting bone. But the side wound was worse. The bullet had entered below his ribs on the left, and I couldn't see an exit wound, which meant it was still inside him, possibly lodged near his kidney or intestines. This was beyond my capabilities. This needed a surgeon, an operating room, equipment I didn't have. But looking at his face, at the determination in those dark eyes even as pain racked his body, I knew he'd refuse. Whatever he was running from was worse than death. So I would do what I could and pray it was enough. I cleaned and dressed the shoulder wound first, my hands moving with muscle memory while my mind raced. Who was this man? What had he done to deserve being shot and left for dead on a mountain road? And more importantly, who was looking for him? "I'm going to have to probe for the bullet in your side," I said, preparing the local anesthetic I'd managed to save from my hospital days. "I can numb the area, but it's going to be agonizing. If you have anything you want to tell me before I start, now would be the time." His lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it wasn't twisted with pain. "My name is Henry," he said, "and I'm very sorry for what's about to happen to your life." The bullet extraction took 3 hours that felt like 3 days. Henry passed out twice from the pain despite the local anesthetic, which was probably a blessing. I'd had to dig deeper than I'd hoped, my hands slick with blood and sweat as I worked by the light of a desk lamp I'd positioned overhead. When I finally felt the forceps close around metal and pulled the deformed slug free, I nearly collapsed with relief. The bullet sat in a steel bowl on my nightstand now, a small piece of evidence I probably should have destroyed but couldn't bring myself to. It was proof that this had really happened, that I'd really done this insane thing. I stitched him closed with hands that had steadied after the initial panic, applied fresh dressing, and started an IV drip of fluids I'd kept for emergencies. He needed blood, but I had no way to provide that. All I could do was keep him hydrated and pump him full of the strongest antibiotics I had. It was nearly 3 in the morning when I finally sank into the chair beside his bed, too exhausted to move. Rain still pattered against the windows, a gentle percussion that should have been soothing but only reminded me how isolated we were, how vulnerable. I studied his face in the dim light. Even unconscious and pale from blood loss, he was striking. Strong features that suggested Mediterranean heritage, a straight nose that looked like it had been broken at least once, full lips that were surprisingly soft-looking in a face otherwise carved from granite. There was a scar along his jawline, old and faded, and another near his hairline. This wasn't his first brush with violence. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. A text from my ex-husband, Marcus. "Just checking in. Hope you're doing okay with the anniversary coming up. The anniversary of Tyler's death. Our 3-year-old son who drowned in our pool while I was inside, just for a moment, just to answer a work call that couldn't wait. The call that had cost me everything." I deleted the message without responding, as I always did. Marcus's guilt-wrapped concern was something I couldn't handle on top of everything else. He'd blamed me, quietly but completely, until the weight of his unspoken accusations had crushed our marriage into dust. Harper. The name was barely a whisper, but it jerked my attention back to the bed. Henry's eyes were open, focused on me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "How do you know my name?" I asked, suddenly aware of how isolated we were, how little I actually knew about this man. "You're male," he said, his voice rough with pain. On the table by the door. "Harper Chen. Divorced, I'm guessing from the solo address. Living alone by choice in the middle of nowhere." His dark eyes held mine. "Running from something. You're very observant for someone who was half dead an hour ago. Observation keeps you alive in my line of work." "And what line of work is that?" He was quiet for a long moment, and I thought he might not answer. Then, "The kind that gets you shot and left for dead on a mountain road." "That's not much of an answer. It's all the answer I can give you right now." His hand moved to the IV in his arm, checking it with the knowledge of someone familiar with medical equipment. "You did good work. I'm impressed. I'm a nurse, or I was." I stood, needing distance from his penetrating gaze. "You should rest. Your body needs to heal. Harper." The way he said my name stopped me at the door. "The men who did this to me, they're dangerous. If they find out you helped me, they'll come after you too. I need you to understand that." I turned back to face him. "Who are they?" "People who used to work for me. People I trusted." Something dark and furious flickered across his face. My second in command, my brother in everything but blood, decided he'd rather have my position than his own. Easier to take it if I'm dead. "You're in organized crime," I said flatly. It wasn't a question. I prefer to think of myself as a businessman with occasionally complicated client relationships. His attempt at levity fell flat. "But yes, I run a family. Or I did, before Marco decided to betray me. Every instinct screamed at me to throw him out, to call the police, to end this nightmare before it consumed me. But I thought about the bullet I'd pulled from his body, about the cold calculation required to shoot someone twice and leave them to die. Whatever Henry was, his enemies were worse. How did you survive? I asked instead. Being shot twice and left on a mountain road in the rain. The ambush happened near one of my legitimate businesses, a restaurant up in the hills. Marco and 3 of his men were waiting in the parking lot. I knew something was wrong the moment I saw them, the way they were positioned, but I was arrogant enough to think I could talk my way out of it. He shifted slightly, wincing at the movement. The first shot spun me around. The second one dropped me. They left me for dead because they were in a hurry. Stupid mistake. You crawled to the road? Half a mile through the woods in the rain. There was no pride in his voice, just exhausted determination. I knew if I stayed where they left me, I'd die. Figured the road was my only chance. I imagined that journey, bleeding and in agony, dragging himself through the darkness on the slim hope that someone would find him. Someone who would help rather than finish what Marco had started. You're lucky I came along, I said quietly. Luck had nothing to do with it. His dark eyes held mine. You came along because you were meant to. Because whatever force governs these things knew I needed you specifically. That's a very romantic view of being shot and nearly dying. I'm an optimist. This time his smile reached his eyes, transforming his face into something that made my heart skip. It's kept me alive this long. Over the next few days, I fell into a routine I hadn't expected. Changing his dressings 3 times daily, monitoring for signs of infection that thankfully never materialized, adjusting his pain medication to keep him comfortable, but not so sedated that he couldn't stay alert. He was a model patient, following my instructions without complaint, sleeping when I told him to sleep, eating the soup and bread I prepared even though I knew it wasn't nearly enough nutrition for someone recovering from major trauma. But it was the moments between medical care that unsettled me most. The way his eyes followed me around the room, not threatening, but assessing, as though he were memorizing every detail about me. The brush of his fingers against mine when I checked his pulse, contact that lasted a fraction too long to be accidental. The rough timbre of his voice when he thanked me, something intimate in the simple words. On the 3rd night, I woke to find him standing by the window of his room, one hand braced against the frame for support. He'd pulled on a pair of my ex-husband's sweatpants that I'd found in a box in the garage, but his torso was bare except for the bandages. In the moonlight filtering through the curtains, I could see the defined muscles of his back, the way they shifted as he breathed. You should be in bed, I said from the doorway. He didn't turn around. Couldn't sleep. Keep thinking about Marco, about how I missed the signs, how I let him get close enough to destroy everything I built. I moved into the room, maintaining a careful distance. You couldn't have known he'd betray you. I should have. His voice was hard with self-recrimination. That's my job to know. To see the threats before they materialize. To protect what's mine. He finally turned to face me, and the raw emotion in his eyes made my breath catch. I failed everyone who trusted me. My family, my people, everyone who depended on me to keep them safe. You're being too hard on yourself. Am I? He took a step toward me, then another, moving with the careful control of someone in pain, but determined not to show it. Marco didn't act alone. He had help from at least 3 of my captains, maybe more. That kind of betrayal doesn't happen overnight. It means I missed weeks, maybe months of planning. It means I was so focused on external threats that I didn't see the knife being sharpened behind my back. He was close now. Close enough that I could smell the antiseptic from his bandages mixed with something else. Something essentially male that made my pulse quicken. I should have stepped back, maintained professional distance, reminded myself that he was a patient, and I was his caregiver and nothing more. But I didn't move. "What will you do?" I asked quietly. "When you're healed. Will you go back?" "I don't know yet." His hand came up, fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. "First, I need to figure out who I can trust, who was in on Marco's plan and who's still loyal. Then I need to get word to them that I'm alive." "Won't that just paint a target on your back again?" "The target's already there, Harper. I'm a dead man walking until I reclaim what's mine." His thumb traced along my jawline, and I shivered despite myself. "But I'm starting to think there might be things worth living for that I hadn't considered before. I knew I should pull away, should maintain the boundaries I'd erected after Marcus and Tyler. But standing there in the moonlight with Henry's dark eyes boring into mine, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Want, need, the desire to be touched not as a punishment or obligation, but as something cherished. "This is a bad idea," I whispered, even as my body swayed toward his. "Probably." His other hand came up to frame my face, his touch reverent despite the roughness of his palms. "But I've spent my whole life making calculated decisions, weighing risks and benefits. Maybe it's time I did something just because it feels right. You're still recovering. You're vulnerable. I've never felt less vulnerable in my life." His forehead rested against mine, his breath warm against my lips. "Tell me to stop, Harper. Tell me this crosses a line and I'll go back to bed, and we'll pretend it never happened." I should have said the words, should have stepped back and re-established the professional distance that kept me safe. But instead, I closed the gap between us and kissed him. His response was immediate and overwhelming. One hand tangled in my hair, while the other pulled me against him, careful of his injuries but urgent nonetheless. He kissed me like a man drowning, like I was air and he'd been underwater for far too long. And I kissed him back with a desperation that surprised me. 3 years of isolation and grief pouring into the contact. We broke apart, gasping, both breathing hard. His eyes were darker than before, dilated with desire that matched my own. "Tell me to stop," he repeated, but there was no conviction in his voice now. "I can't," I admitted. "God help me, I can't." "Then come to bed with me." His voice was rough with need. "Let me touch you properly. Let me show you what you've awakened in me." Every rational thought screamed that this was insane, that I was conflating gratitude with attraction, that I was vulnerable and making terrible decisions. But for the first time since Tyler's death, I felt alive. I felt wanted not out of obligation, but out of genuine desire. So I took his hand and let him lead me to the bed. Let him peel away my clothes with hands that trembled slightly. Let him worship my body with a reverence that brought tears to my eyes. And when he finally claimed me, moving carefully because of his wounds, but with an intensity that left no doubt about his desire, I felt something crack open inside me. The walls I'd built around my heart, the isolation I'd wrapped myself in like armor, all of it crumbled in the face of this connection I hadn't expected and couldn't deny. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the sheets, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my bare shoulder. "This complicates things," he murmured. "That's an understatement." "I'm going to have to leave soon. Once I'm strong enough to travel, I need to make contact with people I trust, start planning my return." "I know." The words hurt more than I expected. Already I was imagining this room empty again, my life returning to its previous isolation. Only now it would be worse because I'd know what I was missing. "Come with me," he said suddenly, his hand stilling on my shoulder. "When I go, come with me, Harper." I lifted my head to look at him, seeing the seriousness in his dark eyes. "You don't mean that. You barely know me." "I know enough." His hand cupped my face with that same gentle possessiveness. I know you're strong enough to cut a bullet out of a man without flinching. I know you're brave enough to help a stranger even when every instinct told you to run. I know you're lonely in a way that matches my own. And I know that what we have, this connection, it's rare, too rare to walk away from. Your world is dangerous. It is, he agreed, but you're not safe here either, not anymore. The moment I stepped into your life, you became part of this whether we want it or not. At least with me, I can protect you. I don't need protection. Everyone needs protection, Harper. Even strong, capable women who save lives in the middle of the night. His thumb stroked across my cheekbone. Let me be that for you. Let me give you a reason to stop running from life. I wanted to say yes. God, how I wanted to say yes. But fear held me back. The same fear that had kept me isolated for 3 years. I can't. I'm sorry, Henry. But I can't walk into your world. I barely survived losing everything once. I won't put myself in a position to lose it all again. Something flickered in his eyes. Hurt, perhaps, or disappointment. But he nodded, accepting my decision even as his arms tightened around me. Then we have whatever time we have. And I'll make sure you remember me when I'm gone. As I drifted toward sleep in his arms, I tried to memorize the feeling of being held, of being wanted, of being alive, because I knew that when Henry left, he'd take this feeling with him, and I'd be alone again, with nothing but memories to keep me warm through the long, cold nights ahead. The illusion of safety lasted exactly 6 more days. 6 days of Henry growing stronger, his movements less careful, his color returning to something approaching healthy. 6 days of me pretending this was sustainable, that we could exist in this bubble forever, that the outside world wouldn't eventually come crashing through my door. 6 days of stolen moments that felt like a lifetime. Mornings when I'd wake to find him watching me with those dark, intense eyes. Afternoons when he'd help me cook, moving around my kitchen with surprising domesticity for a man who commanded an empire. Evenings when we'd sit by the fire and he'd tell me stories about his life, carefully editing out the violence but giving me glimpses of the man beneath the Mafia boss. And the nights. God, the nights. When he'd pull me close and make love to me with a desperate intensity that suggested he was trying to memorize every inch of my body, every sound I made, every way I responded to his touch, as though he knew our time was running out. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. I was in the kitchen making coffee, humming quietly to myself, when Henry appeared in the doorway. His face was tight with an expression I'd learned to recognize over the past week. Danger. Get dressed, he said quietly. Pack a bag. Only essentials. My blood ran cold. What's wrong? I don't know yet. But something's off. He moved to the window, careful to stay to the side where he wouldn't be visible from outside. There's a car at the end of your driveway. Black SUV, tinted windows. It's been sitting there for 20 minutes. I joined him at the window, my heart hammering. He was right. The vehicle was positioned just where my driveway met the main road, close enough to watch the house but far enough to not be immediately obvious. Maybe it's lost, I suggested, knowing even as I said it that I didn't believe it. Maybe. But his tone said he didn't believe it either. Harper, I need you to trust me. If that car is what I think it is, we have maybe 10 minutes before they move in. Move in? Here? Fear spiked through me, hot and acidic. How would they even know to look here? I don't know. His jaw clenched. But I'm not waiting around to find out. Get dressed. Now. I ran to my bedroom, throwing on jeans and a warm sweater with shaking hands. I grabbed a duffel bag from my closet and started stuffing it with clothes, toiletries, my laptop, anything I could think of that I might need. My mind was racing. unable to process that my sanctuary was about to become a war zone. When I returned to the living room, Henry had changed into the clothes I'd bought him at a local store. Dark jeans and a black Henley that emphasized his broad shoulders. He'd found my ex-husband's jacket in the closet, and despite the situation, some part of me noticed how much better it looked on him. He was on his phone, speaking in rapid Italian to someone on the other end. His voice was hard, commanding, the voice of a man used to giving orders and having them obeyed instantly. This was the Henry his world knew, not the tender lover who'd held me through the night. "Dante's coming," he said when he hung up, tucking the phone into his pocket. "He's one of my captains, someone I know I can trust. He's 40 minutes out." 40 minutes is a long time. It is. He crossed to me, his hands framing my face with that gentle possessiveness I'd come to crave. "Listen to me carefully. If things go bad, if they get in here before Dante arrives, I need you to run. There's a trail behind your house that leads to the fire road. Take it and don't look back. Dante knows where to find you. I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are." His voice was firm. "Harper, these men won't hesitate to kill you to get to me, and I won't let that happen. I won't let another person die because of me." Before I could argue, the sound of car doors slamming echoed from outside. We both froze, then moved to the window. The black SUV was now parked directly in front of my house, and 4 men were climbing out. They wore dark clothing and moved with military precision, spreading out to cover all the exits. "Too late to run," Henry said quietly, his hand moving to the small of his back, where I now saw he'd tucked a gun I hadn't known he had. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, stay behind me." The knock on the door was almost polite. 3 sharp raps that somehow sounded more threatening than if they'd simply kicked it in. "Henry Castellano," a voice called from outside. "We know you're in there. Marco wants to talk. Come out peacefully and the woman doesn't have to get hurt." Henry's jaw clenched. "Marco's not here himself. Interesting. He's still not sure if I'm really alive or if this is a trap." "What do we do?" I whispered. He was quiet for a moment, his mind clearly racing through options. Then he did something I didn't expect. He smiled, cold and dangerous. "We give them what they want, but not the way they're expecting." He raised his voice, calling toward the door. "I need medical attention. The woman's a nurse. She was treating me when you showed up. Let me stabilize and I'll come out." There was a pause, then muffled discussion from outside. Finally, "You have 5 minutes. Then we're coming in anyway." Henry turned to me, his hands on my shoulders. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out first, hands up, scared. Play up the innocent bystander who got caught in the middle. They'll separate us, probably put me in their car. When that happens, you run. Dante will be here soon, and he'll find you." That's a terrible plan. It's the only plan that keeps you alive. His dark eyes bored into mine. "Harper, please. I can't protect you if I'm worried about you getting caught in the crossfire. I need to know you're safe." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to stay with him no matter what, but I also knew he was right. In whatever was about to happen, I'd be a liability, not an asset. "Promise me you'll survive this," I said, my hands fisting in his shirt. "Promise me I'm not about to watch another person I care about die." His expression softened, some of the hardness leaving his eyes. "I promise. I've survived worse than this, Harper, and now I have something to survive for." He kissed me then, hard and desperate, pouring everything unsaid into the contact. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he turned me toward the door. "Time to perform," he murmured. "Make it convincing." I took a shaking breath and opened the door, my hands raised. The 4 men immediately tensed, weapons rising to point at me. "Please," I said, letting my voice shake with genuine fear. "Please don't hurt me. I'm just a nurse." He was injured on the road and I helped him. I didn't know who he was. I swear I didn't know. The man who seemed to be in charge, a thick-necked brute with cold eyes, gestured with his gun. "Come out slowly, hands where we can see them." I stepped onto the porch, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. Behind me, Henry emerged, his hands also raised, moving slowly to show he wasn't a threat. "Marco's going to be pleased," the leader said, a cruel smile twisting his features. "He thought you were dead for sure. Going to be real satisfying for him to finish the job himself. Tell Marco if he wants to kill me, he should have the balls to do it in person instead of sending his lapdogs," Henry replied, his voice cold and controlled. The punch came fast, a vicious backhand that split Henry's lip and sent blood spattering. I gasped, taking an involuntary step toward him before catching myself. His eyes met mine, and I saw the warning there. Don't react. Don't give them leverage. "Put him in the car," the leader ordered. "Zip-tie the woman and leave her. She's nobody." Two of the men grabbed Henry, forcing him toward the SUV with more violence than necessary. He didn't resist, just kept his eyes on me until they shoved him into the back seat. The leader approached me with zip ties, and I forced myself to stand still, to not fight as he secured my hands behind my back. "You're lucky," he said, his breath hot and sour against my face. "Marco doesn't like unnecessary witnesses, but he figures you've seen enough. Keep your mouth shut about what happened here, and you might live to see tomorrow." Then they were gone, the SUV peeling out of my driveway with Henry inside. I stood frozen on my porch, my hands secured behind my back, watching the vehicle disappear around the bend. As soon as they were out of sight, I twisted my hands, testing the restraints. The man had been careless, more interested in intimidation than actual security. With some effort and pain, I managed to work one hand free, then the other. I ran inside, grabbing my duffel bag and phone. My hands shook as I dialed the number Henry had programmed into my contacts. A man answered on the first ring. "This is Dante," the voice said, rough with a thick Italian accent. "You Harper?" "Yes, they took him. 4 men in a black SUV. They left maybe 2 minutes ago, heading east on Mountain View Road. I'm 15 minutes out. Stay where you are." "No." The word came out stronger than I expected. "I'm coming with you. He wouldn't have been here if not for me. I'm not hiding while he faces this alone." There was a pause. "You understand what you're saying? Where this road leads?" "I understand." And I did. I was choosing to step into Henry's world, to accept all the danger and darkness that came with it. "I'm done running. Tell me where to meet you." When Dante's truck pulled up 12 minutes later, I was waiting at the end of my driveway with my bag. He was a mountain of a man, easily 6'4" with shoulders that barely fit through doorways. His face was scarred and brutal, but his eyes held a sharp intelligence. "You're smaller than I expected," was all he said as I climbed into the passenger seat. "I'm stronger than I look." He grunted what might have been approval and hit the gas. "Marco's taken him to the old Merino warehouse on the waterfront. It's where they've been operating since they thought the boss was dead." "How many men?" "At the warehouse? Maybe a dozen. But half of them are still loyal to Henry. They just don't know he's alive yet. Marco's been telling everyone the rival Torinos killed him, using it to consolidate power. So, we have potential allies inside." Dante glanced at me with something like respect. "You think like one of us already?" "Yeah. If we can get word to the right people that the boss is alive, Marco's coalition falls apart. Problem is getting that word out before Marco puts a bullet in Henry's head." I thought about this, about the pieces on the board and how they might be moved. An idea began forming, dangerous and probably insane, but possible. Does Marco know me? Know what I look like? Shouldn't. Why? Because I have a plan. and it's going to require me to walk right through the front door. Dante listened as I explained, his expression skeptical, but gradually shifting to something like grudging admiration. "It's risky," he said when I finished. "Lot of ways it could go wrong. Do you have a better idea?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, a fierce expression that reminded me of Henry. "No. And the boss is going to either kill me or promote me for letting you do this. Maybe both." As we drove toward the waterfront, toward whatever waited at that warehouse, I thought about the woman I'd been 2 weeks ago. Isolated, broken, hiding from life. That woman would never have considered walking into a Mafia stronghold to rescue a man she'd known for less than a month. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Henry had awakened something in me, something fierce and strong that refused to hide any longer. He'd claimed me as surely as I'd claimed him, and I'd be damned if I'd let Marco take him from me now. "Tell me about the layout," I said to Dante, my voice steady despite the fear singing through my veins. I need to know every exit, every blind spot, every place where the advantage might shift in our favor. As he began describing the warehouse in detail, I mentally prepared myself for what came next. This was my choice, my decision to step into the darkness. And whatever happened, I'd face it standing up, fighting back, refusing to be a victim ever again. Henry had taught me that. Now it was time to teach Marco Castellano what happened when you underestimated the power of a woman with nothing left to lose. The Merino warehouse squatted on the waterfront like a rusting monument to decay, its corrugated metal walls streaked with salt and time. Through the grimy windows, I could see shadows moving, the shapes of men going about their business, unaware that everything was about to change. Dante had parked 2 blocks away in an alley that reeked of rotting fish and diesel fuel. He was on his phone, speaking rapid Italian to contacts inside the warehouse, people Henry trusted who'd been operating under Marco's control while thinking their boss was dead. "Okay," he said, ending the call and turning to me. "Roberto's in there. He was Henry's right hand before Marco, one of the old guard. He's got 5 men with him who were loyal to Henry's father before they were loyal to Henry. They'll move when we give the signal. And the signal is me walking through the front door claiming to be Marco's girlfriend." I heard the absurdity in my own voice, but pushed forward anyway. "Tell me again why this will work." "Because Marco's paranoid, especially now. He thinks Henry might have told people what happened before he died. He's been careful about his movements, keeping his girlfriend Sofia away from the warehouse for her safety." Dante pulled out his phone, showing me a photo. "This is her. You're similar enough, blonde, about the same height. With the right attitude and the dim lighting in there, you might be able to bluff your way to wherever they're holding Henry." I studied the photo. Sofia was beautiful in that polished way that spoke of money and maintenance. I looked nothing like her, really, but I understood Dante's point. In the chaos of men who weren't expecting an intrusion, similarity could become identity. What happens when they realize I'm not her? That's when Roberto and his men make their move. We've got surprise and numbers, barely. Marco brought 12 men. 6 are loyal to him. 6 were loyal to Henry but think he's dead. The moment they see him alive, the math changes in our favor. "Barely changes," I corrected. "It'll still be chaos. People could die. People are going to die anyway." His expression was grim. "If we don't move now, Henry's dead within the hour. Marco's just waiting until he's convinced Henry hasn't told anyone else where to find him. Then he'll put a bullet in his head and dump the body in the harbor." I thought about that. About Henry weighted down with chains, sinking into the dark water. About never seeing those intense eyes again. Never feeling his hands on my skin. Never hearing him say my name in that low, intimate way that made me feel cherished. "Tell Roberto to be ready," I said, opening the truck door. "I'm going in." Dante grabbed my arm, his grip firm but not painful. "You're brave," Henry chose well. He didn't choose me. I chose him. Sometimes it's the same thing. The walk to the warehouse felt like walking to my own execution. Every step echoed in my ears, amplified by adrenaline and fear. I'd changed into clothing Dante had brought from one of Henry's safe houses, expensive designer pieces that transformed me from rural nurse to urban sophisticate. My hair was pulled back severely, makeup applied with a heavy hand. I didn't look like Harper Chen anymore. I looked like someone who belonged in this world. The two guards at the entrance straightened as I approached, hands moving toward weapons. I channeled every ounce of entitled irritation I could muster. About time someone opened this door. I snapped in my best impression of a woman used to getting her way. Marco's expecting me. Tell him Sophia's here and she's not happy about having to come to this disgusting place. The guards exchanged glances. Boss didn't say nothing about you coming. Boss doesn't tell you everything. I let my voice drip with condescension. Now are you going to let me in, or do I call Marco and tell him his girlfriend is standing outside being harassed by his men? Because I promise you don't want that conversation. Another exchange of glances. Then the shorter guard shrugged. Your funeral. He's in the back office with the prisoner. Prisoner. The word sent ice through my veins, but I kept my expression bored and irritated as they opened the door. The warehouse interior was dimly lit and cavernous, filled with stacked crates and shadows. Men lounged against walls or sat at makeshift tables playing cards. I counted 8 visible, which meant 4 more were somewhere I couldn't see. I walked with confidence I didn't feel, my heels clicking on concrete, heading toward the back where I could see a light spilling from an office door. The men watched me pass with varying degrees of interest, but none moved to stop me. To them, I was just the boss's girlfriend, nothing worth paying attention to. The office door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could hear voices. One I recognized as Henry's, rough with pain, but still defiant. The other must be Marco. You should have stayed dead, Marco was saying. Would have been cleaner for everyone. Now I have to explain to the families why you're dying again. The families are going to ask why you betrayed me in the first place. Henry's voice was steady, despite whatever they'd done to him. You think they'll accept your leadership after you murdered their rightful boss? They'll accept it because they'll have no choice. With you gone and your loyalists eliminated, I'll be the only one left who knows how to run things. They'll fall in line or fall apart. I took a breath and pushed the door open, channeling Sophia's entitlement. Marco, I've been waiting in the car for 20 minutes. You said this wouldn't take long. Marco spun around, his gun coming up automatically before recognition hit. He was shorter than I'd expected, maybe 5'8", with the kind of wiry build that spoke of violence rather than gym time. His face was all sharp angles and suspicious eyes. Sophia? Confusion warred with anger in his expression. I told you to stay away from here. You also promised we'd have dinner tonight. Remember? Your mother's expecting us? I let irritation edge my voice, not looking at Henry even though every cell in my body screamed to check on him. Are you almost done with whatever this is? I finally let my gaze drift to Henry, and the sight made my breath catch despite my efforts to remain calm. He was tied to a chair, his face bruised and bleeding. They'd reopened his shoulder wound, fresh blood seeping through the bandages I'd applied just this morning, but his eyes were alert, and when they met mine, I saw recognition flash followed immediately by understanding. This won't take much longer, Marco said, his attention divided between me and Henry. Just finishing some business. Go wait outside. In this neighborhood? Are you insane? I moved further into the room, deliberately positioning myself between them. I'll wait here. Just hurry up. Marco's eyes narrowed. You never came to the warehouse before. Why now? Because you've been avoiding me all week. I let real frustration bleed into my voice, the frustration of days spent worrying about Henry. You promised things would calm down after you took over, that we'd have more time together. But you're still running around playing mob boss while I sit alone in that apartment. Things are complicated right now. Things are always complicated with you. I took another step, positioning myself directly in Marco's line of fire to Henry. Who is that anyway? Why does he look familiar? He's nobody, old business. Marco's hand came up to my arm, trying to guide me away. Go wait with the men outside. I'll be done in 5 minutes. That's when I made my move. As Marco's hand touched my arm, I grabbed it and twisted hard, using his own momentum to throw him off balance. At the same time, I shouted at the top of my lungs, "Henry Castellano is alive!" For a frozen moment, nothing happened. Then chaos erupted. Marco recovered faster than I'd hoped, his fist catching me in the ribs and sending me stumbling backward. But my shout had carried through the warehouse, and I heard the immediate response. Voices raised in confusion and anger. Furniture scraping as men jumped to their feet. Henry was moving despite his restraints, using his weight to tip the chair backward, away from Marco's immediate reach. Marco's gun came up, tracking toward him, and I didn't think. I just launched myself at Marco, hitting him low and hard. The gun went off, deafeningly loud in the enclosed space. The bullet went wild, punching through the wall. Marco and I hit the ground hard, and his elbow caught me in the face, stars exploding across my vision. Then Dante was there, having crashed through the back entrance. His massive fist connected with Marco's jaw, and the smaller man went flying. Through the office door, I could see the warehouse had erupted into a full brawl. Men were fighting each other. Loyalties suddenly divided now that Henry was revealed to be alive. Dante hauled me to my feet with one hand, while covering Marco with his gun with the other. You okay? Fine. I rushed to Henry, my hands fumbling with the ropes binding him. Are you hurt? Did the bullet... I'm fine. His voice was rough with emotion. Harper, you insane, beautiful woman. You walked right into a warehouse full of killers. You would have done the same for me. The ropes finally gave way, and Henry surged to his feet despite his injuries. His hands framed my face, and he kissed me hard and desperate, tasting like blood and relief. Remind me to either kill you or marry you when this is over. Why not both? A gunshot from the warehouse made us break apart. The fighting was intensifying, men choosing sides in real time. Through the office window, I saw Roberto, recognizable from Dante's description, rallying men to Henry's side. But Marco's loyalists were fighting back hard. Marco himself was stirring on the floor, shaking off the effects of Dante's punch. His hand was moving toward his gun, and I saw the moment he found it, saw him starting to bring it up toward Henry. I didn't think. I grabbed the metal desk lamp and brought it down hard on Marco's wrist. The gun clattered away, and Marco howled with pain and rage. Dante stepped forward and pressed his gun to Marco's temple. Give me a reason, Dante growled. Please, stand down. Henry's voice, commanding and powerful despite his injuries, carried through the warehouse. Everyone, stand down now. The fighting gradually ceased as men realized their boss was not only alive but present. The warehouse fell into an eerie silence, broken only by heavy breathing and the occasional groan of someone injured. Henry walked to the office door, and I followed, staying close. His presence commanded the space in a way I'd never seen before. This was Henry Castellano as his world knew him. Powerful, dangerous, absolutely in control. Marco thought he could take what wasn't his, Henry said, his voice carrying to every corner of the warehouse. He thought you'd all fall in line after I was dead. But I'm not dead, and I want to know right now who stands with me and who stands with the traitor. Men began moving, slowly at first, then with more certainty. Those loyal to Henry stepped forward. Those who'd sided with Marco stayed back, their faces showing varying degrees of regret and calculation. It was over in minutes. Marco's coalition crumbled without their leader, men surrendering or fleeing out the back exits. Dante and Roberto rounded up those who stayed, securing them efficiently. Marco himself was still on the floor of the office, cradling his broken wrist, his face twisted with hatred. "You should have stayed dead," he spat at Henry. "This isn't over." "Yes," Henry said quietly, "it is. You broke the most sacred rule, Marco. You betrayed family. There's only one punishment for that." I saw the fear flash across Marco's face then, saw him realize that his gamble had failed and what that failure meant. "Henry, please. We were brothers. Doesn't that count for something?" "It counted for everything. That's why this hurts." Henry nodded to Roberto. "Take him to the boat. Make it clean." "No!" Marco's voice rose to a scream as Roberto's men dragged him away. "Henry, you can't. We were family." "Were," Henry agreed. "Past tense." As Marco's screams faded into the distance, I felt Henry sag slightly beside me. The adrenaline was wearing off, and his injuries were catching up with him. I slipped under his arm, supporting his weight. "You need a doctor," I said quietly. "I have one. Best nurse I've ever met." His hand tightened on my shoulder. "Harper, what you did today was necessary and crazy, and I'd do it again." I looked up at him, seeing past the blood and bruises to the man beneath. "You said I had to choose whether to walk into your world. I'm choosing, if you'll have me. If I'll—" He laughed, the sound rough but genuine. "Harper, after what you just did, you're not walking into my world. You're ruling it beside me." Dante approached, his expression carefully neutral. "Boss, we need to move. Police will have heard about this by now, and we need to be gone before they arrive." Henry nodded, then addressed the men gathered in the warehouse. "Spread the word. The Castellano family is under my control again. Anyone who supported Marco's betrayal has 24 hours to leave the city. Anyone who stays accepts my rule and my judgment. Is that understood?" A chorus of affirmations echoed through the space. These men, I realized, were relieved. They'd been operating in chaos under Marco's paranoid leadership. Henry represented stability, tradition, the order they understood. As we left the warehouse, Dante supporting Henry on one side and me on the other, I felt the weight of what had just happened settling onto my shoulders. I'd walked into a Mafia stronghold, impersonated a mob boss's girlfriend, and helped orchestrate a coup that had restored Henry to power. My old life was gone. The isolated nurse hiding from the world had died in that warehouse. In her place was someone new, someone stronger, someone who'd chosen to stand beside a dangerous man and help him reclaim his throne. As we climbed into Dante's truck, Henry pulled me close despite his pain. "Are you sure about this?" he asked quietly. "Once we leave here, there's no going back to normal. You'll be mine, publicly and completely. Every enemy I have will see you as a target. Every ally will judge whether you're worthy to stand beside me. It's a hard life, Harper." I thought about my empty cottage, the 3 years of isolation, the safe life I'd built that had felt more like a tomb than a sanctuary. Then I looked at Henry, at the blood and bruises, and the fierce intelligence in his dark eyes. "I'm sure," I said. "Take me home." "Home," he repeated, and something in his voice made it sound like a promise. "Yes, let's go home." Home turned out to be a penthouse in the city's most exclusive building, the kind of place I'd only seen in magazines. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering skyline. Modern furniture and shades of charcoal and cream created spaces both elegant and comfortable, and artwork that probably cost more than my cottage hung on the walls. But it was the security that truly announced whose home this was. Cameras monitored every entrance. Armed guards stood at subtle posts throughout the building, and the elevator required both a key card and fingerprint scan to reach the top floor. This was the fortress of a man who'd learned that betrayal could come from anywhere. "It's temporary," Henry said, as Dante helped him into the penthouse, "until I'm sure all of Marco's people are gone and the situation is stable. Then we'll go wherever you want." "A secret cabin in the mountains?" I suggested, helping him to the leather sofa. "Somewhere with no cell service and no Mafia wars?" "If that's what you want." His hand caught mine, thumb stroking across my knuckles. "Harper, I meant what I said. You rule beside me now. That means your voice carries weight. Your decisions matter. If you want out of the city, out of this life, I'll find a way to make that happen." Liar. But I smiled to take the sting from the word. You can't just walk away from who you are, and I wouldn't ask you to. Besides, after today, I'm in this whether I want to be or not. Marco's allies won't forget that I helped take him down. "No," Henry agreed grimly. "They won't. Which is why you're going to need protection, training, people you can trust. Starting with actual medical attention for you." I was already moving toward the bathroom where Dante had said there were first aid supplies. "Those wounds need to be cleaned and redressed, and I want to make sure they didn't do any internal damage when they beat you. Yes, Dr. Chen. Nurse Chen. Don't promote me just because we're sleeping together." His laugh followed me into the bathroom. When I returned with supplies, Dante had gone and Henry was carefully removing his shirt. The sight of his injuries made anger spike through me. The bullet wounds I'd so carefully treated were inflamed and seeping. Fresh bruises mottled his ribs in shades of purple and yellow. There were burns on his arms that looked like cigarettes. "What did they do to you?" My voice came out harder than I'd intended. Marco wanted information. Who else knew I was alive, where I'd been hiding, who was still loyal to me? Henry's expression was distant, shuttered. Standard interrogation techniques. Nothing I haven't experienced before. That doesn't make it okay. I began cleaning the wounds with perhaps more force than necessary, making him wince. "Sorry." "Don't be. I like that you're angry on my behalf. It's been a long time since anyone cared enough to be angry for me rather than at me." I worked in silence for a while, my hands moving with practiced efficiency, but questions burned in my mind, things I needed to understand about the life I'd chosen. Marco said something about the families. What did he mean? "The 5 families control organized crime in this region. We're one of them, have been for 3 generations. My grandfather built the Castellano family from nothing. My father expanded it, and I've been maintaining it for the past decade." He watched me work, his dark eyes thoughtful. Marco thought killing me would make him the new boss. But the families don't work that way. Leadership has to be earned, proved. They'd never accept someone who murdered his predecessor. So what happens now? Now I have to prove I'm still strong enough to lead. That means meetings with the other families, demonstrations of power, making sure everyone knows the Castellanos are stable, despite Marco's attempted coup. His jaw tightened. It means appearing strong even when I'm recovering from being shot twice and beaten. You need time to heal. I need to consolidate power before someone else sees an opportunity in my weakness. His hand covered mine, stilling my movements. "That's where you come in." I pulled back, studying his face. "What do you mean?" Marco's betrayal made me look weak. It showed that someone close to me could turn, could nearly succeed in taking everything I'd built. The other families will be watching, wondering if the Castellanos are still strong enough to hold our territory. He pulled me closer until I was standing between his knees. "But if I return from near death with a woman strong enough to walk into a warehouse and engineer my rescue? If I show them that I have someone I can trust absolutely, someone who chose to stand with me rather than being born into this life? That's power, Harper. That's the kind of strength they respect. You want to use me as a political statement. I want to make you my partner in every sense of the word." His hand settled on my waist. Not just my lover or my nurse or the woman I'm protecting. My equal, my queen, the person I trust with everything, including my life. The weight of what he was offering pressed down on me. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about power, politics, the complex web of alliances and obligations that governed his world. I don't know how to be what you need. You already are what I need. His thumb traced along my jawline. Harper, you saved my life twice now. First when you pulled me from that road, and again today when you walked into Marco's stronghold. You're brave, intelligent, capable of making hard decisions under pressure. Those are exactly the qualities I need in a partner. What about love? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Is that part of this equation or just a convenient bonus? His expression softened, some of the calculated politician fading to reveal the man beneath. I told you in the warehouse I'd either kill you or marry you. I was only half joking. He pulled me down onto his lap, careful of his injuries. I'm in love with you, Harper Chen. Completely, irrationally, against all my better judgment. You walked into my life when I was dying and gave me a reason to live. You saw me at my weakest and didn't turn away. How could I not fall in love with that? I'm in love with you too. Saying it out loud made it real, solidified something that had been building since that first night. But love and power are complicated things to mix. Everything worth having is complicated. His lips found mine, the kiss gentle despite the intensity behind it. Say you'll stay. Say you'll stand beside me while I rebuild what Marco tried to destroy. Say you'll be mine, publicly and completely. I already said yes to all of that. In the truck, remember? Say it again. I need to hear it. Yes. I kissed him between words. Yes to staying. Yes to standing beside you. Yes to being yours. I pulled back, my hands framing his face. But you need to be mine too, Henry. This doesn't work if it's one-sided. I need to know you're as committed to me as I am to you. I'm committed to you with everything I have. His voice was rough with emotion. Harper, you're the first real thing in my life. Everyone else wants something from me, power or protection or permission. But you just want me. The man, not the boss. How could I not commit to that completely? We stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped around each other, the city lights glittering beyond the windows. Then exhaustion caught up with both of us. I finished treating his wounds, gave him pain medication, and helped him to the bedroom. The bed was enormous, covered in black silk sheets that probably cost more than my car. But when Henry pulled me down beside him and wrapped his arms around me, it felt like the safest place in the world. Tomorrow, he murmured against my hair, already drifting toward sleep. Tomorrow we start planning. But tonight, just stay with me. Always, I promised. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity that would have been overwhelming if I hadn't had Henry beside me every step. His injuries healed slowly, but his mind was sharp and his determination absolute. We moved through his world together, me learning the complex rules and relationships while he slowly consolidated power. There were meetings with the other families, tense affairs where I was scrutinized and judged by men in expensive suits who dealt in violence and fear. Henry introduced me not as his girlfriend or companion, but as his partner, making it clear that disrespecting me meant disrespecting him. Some accepted this more gracefully than others. Don Salvatore, the elderly head of the Marino family, actually smiled when we were introduced. Smart move, Castellano. A strong woman beside you shows strength, not weakness. My Rosa was the same way. But others were less welcoming. Vincent Torres, young and aggressive as the new head of his family, barely acknowledged me. Bringing outsiders into family business, he muttered to his lieutenant, loud enough for everyone to hear. Gets people killed. Henry's response was ice cold. Careful, Torres. That sounds like a threat against my partner. And threats against what's mine have a way of becoming very expensive for the people making them. The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Vincent's hand twitched toward his jacket, and I saw several other men shift their positions. This was how wars started, I realized. One careless word, one perceived slight. I stepped forward, my voice calm. Don Torres, I understand your concern. Change is always difficult, especially when it comes unexpectedly. But I'm not asking to be involved in family business. I'm simply standing beside the man I love while he does what needs to be done. Surely that's something we can all understand. The room went quiet. Then Vincent's expression shifted, some of the hostility draining away. My apologies, Miss Chen. You're right, of course. I meant no disrespect. After the meeting, in the car heading back to the penthouse, Henry pulled me close. That was brilliantly done. You diffused a situation that could have become very ugly. I just told the truth. No, you read the room and knew exactly what to say to calm everyone down without making me look weak. That's a gift, Harper. Not everyone has it. But not all the challenges were external. There were also Marco's remaining loyalists to deal with. Most had left the city as instructed, but a few had tried to stay, to continue undermining Henry's control from within. Dante handled most of them quietly, making problems disappear before they could become serious threats. But there was one, Marco's cousin Paolo, who refused to back down. He's been spreading rumors, Dante reported during one of our regular security briefings. Telling people the boss is weak, that you're controlling him, making him soft. Let him talk, Henry replied. Words can't hurt me. Words can become actions, I said, thinking of how Marco's betrayal had started with whispers and ended with bullets. Paolo needs to understand that challenging you isn't acceptable. Henry and Dante both looked at me with surprise. What are you suggesting? Henry asked carefully. I'm suggesting we meet with him, face to face, show him that we're united and strong, and that continuing to spread these rumors will only end badly for him. That's dangerous. Paolo's not stable. Meeting with him could give him an opportunity to try something. Then we control the environment, your territory, your terms, your security. I met Henry's gaze steadily. But we show him that threats against you are taken seriously, by both of us. Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Set it up, Dante. The warehouse where we took down Marco. Let Paolo see where traitors end up. The meeting was tense from the start. Paolo arrived with 2 men, his face twisted with barely concealed hatred as he looked at Henry. You wanted to talk? Talk. I want you to understand something, Henry said, his voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. Marco made a mistake. He thought he could take what wasn't his, and he paid the price. You can learn from his mistake, or you can repeat it. Your choice. Marco was right about you. Paolo's eyes flicked to me with contempt. You've gone soft, letting a woman into our world, taking her advice, making decisions based on pillow talk instead of power. The families are laughing at you. Are they? I stepped forward before Henry could respond. Because from what I've seen, the families respect Henry more now than they did before Marco's betrayal. They see a man who survived an assassination attempt and came back stronger. They see a leader who values loyalty and intelligence over mindless violence. If that's what you call soft, Paolo, then I'd hate to see your definition of strong. Paolo's face flushed with rage. His hand moved toward his jacket, and suddenly the air was electric with tension. Dante and the other guards had their weapons out instantly, all pointed at Paolo and his men. Don't, Henry said quietly. Whatever you're thinking of doing, don't. Because the moment you draw that weapon, this stops being a conversation and becomes something else entirely. Something that ends with your blood on this floor just like Marco's. Paolo froze, his hand hovering near his jacket. For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly, carefully, he lowered his hand. "Smart choice," Henry continued. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave the city tonight. You're going to take your men and your complaints and you're going to disappear. If I hear you've been spreading rumors, if I hear you've been causing trouble, if I hear your name at all, I'll consider it an act of war. And wars are expensive, Paolo. Ask Marco how expensive. You can't just exile me. I'm family." Marco was family too. That didn't save him. Henry's voice was absolute. "You have until midnight to be gone. After that, I stop being merciful." Paolo left, his humiliation and rage evident in every line of his body. When he was gone, Dante turned to me with something like respect. "You've got steel in you, Harper Chen. Most people would have stayed silent during that. Most people aren't partnered with Henry Castellano." I took Henry's hand, lacing our fingers together. We stand together or not at all. That night, as we lay in bed with the city lights casting shadows across the ceiling, Henry was quieter than usual. I could feel tension in his body that hadn't been there before. "Talk to me," I said, my hand tracing patterns on his chest. "What's bothering you?" Paolo called me soft, said the families were laughing at me. His voice was carefully controlled, but I heard the uncertainty beneath. "What if he's right? What if bringing you into this world, showing that I care about someone, makes me look weak?" I propped myself up on one elbow, looking down at him. "Do you think I make you weak?" "No, you make me stronger." "Then that's all that matters. Henry, anyone who looks at us and sees weakness isn't paying attention. They're not seeing the woman who walked into a warehouse full of armed men to save you. They're not seeing the partnership we've built, the way we support each other. They're seeing what they expect to see because it fits their worldview better than the truth. And what's the truth? The truth is that we're dangerous together. You have the power and connections. I have the ability to read people and situations. Combined, we're formidable. Anyone who doesn't see that is going to find out the hard way." He pulled me down for a kiss that was equal parts gratitude and desire. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway." "Good, because I'm never letting you go." As we made love that night, slow and tender despite the danger swirling around us, I felt something settle into place. This was my life now. Not the isolated existence I'd built after Tyler's death, but something vibrant and dangerous and alive. I'd stepped into Henry's world completely, and in doing so, I'd found pieces of myself I'd thought were lost forever. Strength, purpose, the will to fight for something beyond mere survival, and most importantly, love. The kind of love that didn't flinch from danger or hide from truth. The kind that stood firm even when the world tried to tear it apart. Henry had claimed me that first night on the road, pulling me into his world whether I wanted it or not. But I'd claimed him right back, choosing to stand beside him, even when it would have been easier to walk away. We were bound now, by blood and bullets, and a love forged in the fires of betrayal and survival. And I wouldn't have it any other way. 3 months after the warehouse confrontation, Henry and I stood on the balcony of our penthouse, watching the sun set over the city that we'd fought so hard to claim. His arm was around my waist, his touch possessive but tender, and I leaned into the solid warmth of his body. "Dante called," he said, his voice carrying that note of satisfaction I'd learned to recognize. "Paolo was spotted in Miami trying to set up his own operation. He won't be a problem anymore." I didn't ask what that meant. I'd learned that some details were better left vague. Instead, I focused on the larger picture. "Are things stable now? With the families?" "As stable as they ever are in this world." His hand tightened on my waist. Don Salvatore has formally recognized you as my equal partner. The others are following his lead. Even Vincent Torres has come around, though I think that has more to do with you helping his sister when she was in trouble than any real change of heart. That had been an unexpected development. Vincent's younger sister, Maria, had gotten involved with a man who turned out to be using her to get information on her family. When she'd come to me in tears, desperate for help, but afraid to tell her brother, I'd helped her extract herself from the situation quietly. Vincent had been grateful enough to shift from hostile to neutral, which in this world was practically an alliance. "What about your family?" I asked. "Your real family, not the business one. You've been avoiding talking about them." Henry was quiet for a long moment. Then, "My parents died when I was 20. Car accident. Though there were always rumors, it was something else. I have a younger sister, Gabriella. She's been living in Italy for the past 5 years, studying art history and pretending she's not a Castellano. Why haven't I met her? Because I've been protecting her from this life. She got out, Harper. She's normal, happy, far away from all of this. I didn't want to drag her back just because I found someone I wanted her to meet." I turned in his arms, reading the conflict in his dark eyes. "You think I'll corrupt her? Or that she'll judge you for being with me?" "I think she'll love you immediately, which will make it harder for her to maintain the distance she's worked so hard to create." His thumb traced along my jawline. "But you're right. It's time. She deserves to know about you, about us. And what exactly are we going to tell her about us?" I'd been avoiding this question, afraid of the answer. "I'm your partner in the business, your lover in private. But what are we, Henry? Long-term?" His expression shifted, something fierce and possessive replacing the uncertainty. "You're mine, Harper. Completely and absolutely. I thought that was clear. It's clear that you want me, but want isn't the same as commitment. Then let me be clear about commitment." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and my breath caught. "Harper Chen, I'm asking you to marry me. Not because it's politically convenient or strategically smart, though it's both of those things, but because I love you. Because I can't imagine my life without you. Because you walked into my world and made it better simply by being in it." He opened the box to reveal a ring that made my vision blur with tears. It was an emerald, deep green, and flawless, surrounded by diamonds. "My grandmother's ring," he explained. "The only piece of jewelry my mother kept when she married my father. It's been waiting for the right woman for 2 generations. I think it's been waiting for you. Henry." My voice broke on his name. "Say yes. Say you'll stand beside me not just as my partner but as my wife. Say you'll build a life with me, dangerous and complicated as it might be. Say you're mine forever, not just for now." Every rational thought told me this was too fast, too intense, too complicated. We'd known each other for less than 4 months. We'd been forged in crisis and blood, not the normal progression of dating and courtship. There were 1,000 reasons to say no, to slow down, to think more carefully. But looking into Henry's dark eyes, feeling the weight of the ring he offered, remembering everything we'd survived together, I knew there was only one answer. Yes, the word came out stronger than I expected. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'm yours forever. Yes to all of it. He slid the ring onto my finger with hands that trembled slightly, the only sign of how much this moment meant to him. Then he was kissing me, deep and claiming, sealing the promise we'd just made. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to mine. "I promise you won't regret this. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." "I don't regret it already." I touched his face, feeling the rough stubble beneath my palm. "Henry, You gave me a reason to live again. After Tyler died, I was just existing, hiding from the world. But you dragged me back into life, showed me I could be strong again. How could I regret that? Tell me about him, Henry said suddenly. Your son. You've mentioned him, but you've never really told me what happened. The question should have hurt, should have reopened wounds I'd worked so hard to seal. But instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. Someone was finally asking, finally wanting to know about the most important person I'd ever lost. His name was Tyler. He was 3 years old, brilliant and funny, and so full of life it hurt sometimes to watch him. I leaned back against the balcony railing, Henry's arms still around me. I was a trauma nurse at the hospital, always working, always stressed. My ex-husband Marcus blamed me for not being home enough. We fought about it constantly. What happened? I was home for once, supposed to be watching Tyler while he played in the backyard, but the hospital called with an emergency about a patient who was crashing. I took the call, just for a few minutes, keeping one eye on Tyler through the window. My voice cracked, but I forced myself to continue. Except those few minutes turned into 10, then 15. And in that time, Tyler somehow got through the fence and into the neighbor's pool. Henry's arms tightened around me, offering silent support. By the time I found him, it was too late. The paramedics tried, I tried, everyone tried. But he was gone, and it was my fault for being distracted, for prioritizing work over watching my son. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. Marcus never forgave me. He never said the words, but I saw it in his eyes every day. Eventually, I couldn't take the guilt and the blame anymore, so I left. Bought that cottage in the middle of nowhere and spent 3 years punishing myself with isolation. It wasn't your fault, Henry said firmly. Accidents happen, Harper. Terrible, heartbreaking accidents that nobody could have prevented. I should have been watching him closer. You were a mother doing her job while trying to take care of her child. That's not negligence, that's life. He turned me to face him, his hands framing my face. Harper, listen to me. What happened to Tyler was a tragedy, but it wasn't your fault. You can't spend the rest of your life punishing yourself for being human. Marcus was wrong, and I suspect he was projecting his own guilt onto you, because it was easier than accepting that sometimes terrible things happen to good people for no reason at all. His thumb wiped away my tears. Tyler would want you to live, Harper. He'd want his mother to be happy, to find love again, to build a new life. Wouldn't he? I thought about Tyler's infectious laugh, his constant curiosity, the way he'd hug me so tight I could barely breathe. He'd been such a loving child. Yes, he would. Then honor his memory by living, by loving, by being the strong, capable woman you are instead of the ghost you've been pretending to be. His words broke something loose inside me, 3 years of grief and guilt that I'd been carrying alone. I sobbed against his chest, and he held me, murmuring soft reassurances in Italian, letting me finally mourn properly. When the tears finally subsided, I felt lighter than I had in years. Thank you, I whispered. For listening, for understanding, for not judging. Never. He kissed my forehead. We're partners, Harper. That means sharing everything, the good and the bad. Your past, your pain, your fears. All of it. Then it's only fair you share yours. I pulled back enough to look at him. You said your parents' death might not have been an accident. Tell me. He was quiet for a long moment, his expression distant. My father was consolidating power, making moves that threatened some of the old guard families. There were rumors he was going to try to unite all 5 families under Castellano leadership. 3 days after those rumors started, his car went off a cliff on a mountain road. And you think someone arranged it? I know someone did. The brakes had been tampered with. The investigation confirmed it. But they could never prove who was responsible, and pushing too hard would have started a war we couldn't win. So I dropped it, took over the family at 20 years old, and spent the next decade making sure I was strong enough that no one would dare try the same thing with me. His jaw clenched. Except Marco proved that even strength isn't always enough. But you survived. You came back stronger. Because of you. He pulled me close again. Harper. Before you, I was operating on autopilot, running the family, maintaining power, surviving. But I wasn't living. You changed that. You gave me something to live for beyond mere survival. We saved each other, I said simply. You pulled me out of isolation. I pulled you off that road. Fair trade. His laugh was soft and genuine. I got the better end of that deal. The wedding was small by Mafia standards, only about 50 people, instead of the hundreds that would have been traditional. We held it at a private estate outside the city, in a garden overlooking the water. Gabriella flew in from Italy, and despite Henry's concerns, she embraced me immediately. Finally, she said, holding me at arm's length to study me. Finally, he found someone worthy of him. I was starting to think he'd married the business. He tried that. It didn't work out well. She laughed, and I could see the family resemblance in her smile. I like you already, Harper. Take care of my brother. He acts tough, but he's got a soft heart under all that armor. I know. It's one of the things I love about him. The ceremony itself was traditional, performed by a priest who'd known Henry's family for decades. I wore a simple white dress, elegant but not ostentatious, and carried white roses. Henry wore a black suit that emphasized his dark good looks, and when he saw me walking toward him, the love in his eyes made my breath catch. You're beautiful, he whispered as I took my place beside him. My wife, my partner, my queen. Your equal, I corrected softly. Always. The vows were traditional, but when Henry spoke his, he added something that made tears spring to my eyes. I promised to honor the memory of those we've lost by building a life worthy of their sacrifice. I promised to never take for granted the gift of your love, and I promised that whatever challenges we face, we'll face them together, as equal partners in all things. When it was my turn, I looked into his dark eyes and spoke from the heart. I promised to stand beside you in light and darkness. I promised to be your strength when you need it, and to lean on you when I need yours. I promise that the love we've forged in fire will never be extinguished, no matter what tries to destroy it. And I promise that we'll build something beautiful from the ashes of our past pain. Don Salvatore himself gave the toast at the reception, raising his glass with a smile. To Henry and Harper Castellano, may their union bring strength to their family and peace to all our families. And may anyone who threatens their happiness find themselves regretting that decision very quickly. The implied threat drew laughter from the assembled families, but beneath it was absolute seriousness. I was protected now not just by Henry, but by every alliance he'd built. Threatening me meant threatening them all. Later, as we danced under the stars with our small group of allies and family watching, Henry pulled me close. Have I told you yet today that I love you? At least a dozen times, but I'll never get tired of hearing it. Good, because I plan to say it every day for the rest of our lives. His hand came up to cup my face. Harper Castellano, it suits you. It does. And it was true. The name felt right in a way my married name to Marcus never had. This wasn't about losing my identity, but about gaining a new one. I was still Harper Chen, trauma nurse and survivor. But I was also Harper Castellano, partner to a powerful man, and forced to be reckoned with in my own right. 6 months after the wedding, I stood in the office Henry had created for me in the penthouse. It was elegant and functional, with space for both the medical supplies I still kept on hand and the books I'd accumulated about business strategy and power dynamics. I'd discovered I had a talent for reading situations and people, for seeing connections others missed. Henry called it my gift. I called it survival instinct honed by years in emergency medicine. Currently, I was reviewing reports about a potential new alliance with a family from Boston. The terms seemed fair, but something was bothering me about the timing. "You're frowning," Henry said from the doorway. "That's never good. These reports from Boston, something's off about them." He crossed to my desk, reading over my shoulder. "What are you seeing?" "The Moretti family wants to ally with us, combine our territories for stronger control of the Northeast. But they're offering too much too fast. No negotiation, no posturing, just here's everything we have. Let's be friends." I tapped the papers. "That's not how this works. There's always negotiation." Henry was quiet, studying the reports with new eyes. "You think it's a trap?" "I think it's worth being very careful about. Maybe send Dante to Boston to do some quiet investigation before we commit to anything." "Smart." He pulled me to my feet, his arms circling my waist. "This is exactly why I need you. You see things I miss because I'm too focused on the big picture. That's what partners do. We fill in each other's blind spots." As it turned out, my instincts were correct. Dante discovered that the Morettis were being investigated by federal authorities and were looking to entangle the Castellanos in their schemes to spread the legal liability. We declined the alliance, and 3 months later, the Moretti family collapsed under the weight of a massive RICO case. "You saved us from that," Henry said that evening, toasting me with a glass of wine. "If we'd allied with them, we'd be facing those same charges right now." "I had help. Dante did the investigation." "But you saw the warning signs. That's the gift, Harper. The ability to see what others miss." He pulled me into his lap, his hands settling on my waist with familiar possessiveness. "I couldn't do this without you." "Yes, you could. You did it for years before I came along." "Did it? Yes. But not as well. Not with the same clarity." His lips found the sensitive spot below my ear. "You make me better, Harper. In every way that matters." 2 years after that night on the road when I'd pulled a dying man into my car, I stood in the nursery we'd prepared, one hand resting on my swollen belly. 8 months pregnant with our daughter, I still marveled at the journey that had brought me here. From isolated nurse hiding from life, to wife of a mafia boss, partner in running an empire, mother to a child who would be born into a world of danger and luxury. Henry appeared in the doorway, his expression soft as he watched me. "Thinking about Tyler?" I'd told him I wanted to name our daughter Sophie, but if we had a son someday, I wanted to name him Tyler, to honor the child I'd lost while celebrating the family I was building. Always, but also thinking about how far we've come. 2 years ago, I was alone in that cottage, convinced I'd never be happy again. And now, look at us. He crossed to me, his hands settling over mine on my belly. Our daughter kicked, a strong thump against our joined palms. She's going to be beautiful like her mother and stubborn like her father. God help us all. His laugh was warm against my hair. I love you, Harper Castellano, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. I love you too, even though you're a criminal who makes me an accessory to your crimes. Alleged criminal. Nothing's ever been proven. Because you're very good at what you do. I learned from the best, and I have an excellent partner who keeps me from making stupid mistakes. His arms tightened around me. We're going to be okay, you know. All of us. This family we're building, it's going to last. I leaned back against his solid warmth, feeling our daughter move beneath our hands, and knew he was right. We'd been forged in fire and blood, tested in ways most couples never experienced. But we'd emerge stronger, more united, absolutely committed to each other and the life we were building. I'd walked into Henry's world expecting to save one life. Instead, I'd found my own life, had discovered that strength I'd thought I'd lost after Tyler's death, had learned that love could grow in the darkest places. As the sun set over the city we ruled together, I made a silent promise to the child growing inside me and to the one I'd lost. I would be strong for them both. I would build a life worthy of their memory and their future. And I would never again hide from the world, no matter how much it frightened me. Because I was Harper Castellano now, wife, partner, soon-to-be mother again, and I was done being afraid. Henry's lips brushed my temple. What are you thinking about? The future, all the possibilities. And what do you see? I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd saved me as surely as I'd saved him. Everything. I see everything. And I did. A future filled with challenges and dangers, but also with love and family and the unshakable bond we'd forged. A future where we stood together against whatever tried to tear us apart. A future worth fighting for. Then let's go claim it, Henry said, his hand finding mine. Together. Together, I agreed. And we did.